Great.
Welcome, everyone. All right, people are coming in. I'm going to start with the boring introduction of myself, because so I'm Roberto Priolo. Very nice to see everyone here. I'm the head of communications of Lean Global Network, and I'm very happy to have with us today Andrew Paris. Andrew is Process Excellence Manager at MEDAIR. Is normally based in Switzerland, but is coming to us tonight, at least here, from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
And Andrew is going to be talking to us about how Lean can empower NGOs to help more people in a better way. And it was a big focus for us this year to try and look at how Lean could be applied to also non-conventional, let's say, or traditional environments. So I'm very curious to hear what Andrew has for us. Andrew, all yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberto. Great to be able to present with you all live and later. So yes, I will talk about how we have been using Lean in MEDAIR to help more people in a better way. I'll begin by introducing MEDAIR, then discussing briefly how we are doing Lean in MEDAIR, and then share with you a number of examples about how Lean is helping us improve our processes and achieve greater impact. So briefly about MEDAIR, we are a Christian humanitarian organization that saves lives and relieves suffering in the world's most difficult to reach and devastated places. You can see below there the countries that we are currently active in. What we do, first of all, we save lives and relieve suffering, largely through health and nutrition, through WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene, and also through shelter and infrastructure. The part of what we also do, though, is to restore hope, especially in these devastated places, which are hard to reach. Sometimes we're the only NGO who's there to help people who think maybe the world has deserted them. And we do help restore hope through the services that we provide, the things we provide for them, and also the capacity that we build in them. And we also really try to give generously, and part of that is to build up the capacity of local actors so they can better sustain themselves through crisis. Just a brief overview about what the numbers. So last year, we served about 4.6 million people in health and nutrition, 2.7 million. For example, 86,000 of those were treated for acute malnutrition, 80% of those discharged as cured. Water, sanitation, and hygiene, almost 1.5 million people, and over 1 million improved access to drinking water. Shelter and infrastructure, over 500,000 people who've received shelter assistance and cash assistance. Interestingly, is a means of delivery that supports the local economy and gives people a choice because they can choose to some extent, what to buy. I want to turn now briefly to the challenges that MEDAIR and other NGOs, humanitarian NGOs, face. And the first one is this increasing funding gap. The needs are increasing. The funding is also increasing. However, the needs are increasing more than the funding. So we struggle to make the resources that we do have go as far as possible. We are often burdened with very strict donor requirements. It's not like when you buy a car from Toyota, you get the car, you get to know what the product is, and you don't care what they do inside. Most of our institutional donors have very strict regulations because they're not the ones getting the benefit of the work that we do. And so they want to look very closely at all of our processes, all of the procedures and policies, and make sure that we're abiding by all of their and our own guidelines. We work in a VUCA world. You're probably familiar with this terminology: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's hard to know what the right choices are. It's hard to know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's changing rapidly and quickly. And to give you an example of that, I want to talk briefly about the crisis context that we work in. So imagine for a moment, or think with me rather for a moment, Toyota and the Kentucky plant here, the largest production facility for Toyota. When they want to put their facility somewhere, what do they look for? They look for these things: a peaceful area, good infrastructure, a friendly government with hopefully tax breaks, easy access road-wise and otherwise, and a highly educated workforce. Meta, on the other hand, one of our sayings is, when the road ends, we keep going. And these are some pictures that give an example of that. We work in natural disaster and conflict zones. We work in areas where there's poor or no infrastructure. Often the governments, you would think, they're happy to have us there, but they're not always so eager to let us in. So we have to go through a lot of administrative hurdles, sometimes to get into countries where the need is the greatest. And often access is limited, partly by the poor infrastructure, but also by sometimes warring factions or the natural disaster itself that we're trying to respond to. And very often people in these countries have, relative to what we find in the West, a much lower level of education. So, but this is where we work. And my point is that in this context, it is even more important to be lean. So how do we do lean in Meta? The first thing we do is we instill a vision of process excellence. I'll talk about that in just a moment. I've also developed what I call the 7 habits of process improvement, the lean tools in a way that's easy for NGO folks to understand. We do provide lean training. In fact, the reason I'm in Nairobi is to give lean greenbelt training. And also last week, I gave my one-day Energizer training. We also have assigned innovation champions in almost each country where we work, who are on top of their normal everyday work, are trying to promote lean and continuous improvement. So we are, as with all these things, then we are innovating, improving how we do our work, and we're somewhat struggling, but we are to some extent documenting and sharing some of these stories, which I'll share with you in just a moment. So process excellence, I wanted to combine the corporate world emphasis together with what an NGO has as values, principles, and how we work. And what I came up with is these 5 elements of what is an excellent process in an NGO, but in fact, it's also works for any corporation, any organization, government, private sector, you name it. That our processes are, first of all, effective in their impact, efficient in their performance, appropriate to the context, empowering to the stakeholders, and continuously improving. And if you want to learn more about that, you're welcome to take a look at those 2 articles down there that I've written, which describe these in a bit more detail. Then I've taken the basic lean things that we need to do to become lean, and I've put them into these 7 habits, which is 1, organize the area. It will sound familiar, 5S or 6S. 2, making work visual. 3, standardizing work, so process maps, SOPs, work instructions, and so forth. These are all ways that we can stabilize the performance of our process. And then the things that are more focused on optimizing our processes are eliminating waste, preventing mistakes, and making work flow. In fact, this is the content of the training that I'm giving this week. And these are all ways of solving problems. So we get into PDCA and root cause analysis and so forth. So this is how I teach and process improvements and the basic skills that I'm trying to build in the people, in my Meta colleagues. And there's an article that was published in May this year in the ASQ Lean Six Sigma Review that provides some detail on each of these. The lean training that I do, I basically have two basic trainings. One is the Process Excellence Energizer. It's 1 day. It has a hands-on simulation with concepts and practical ways to improve these 7 habits. And then I have my 1-week Lean Greenbelt training, which is the thinking, the tools, and a lot of coaching. So there's actually more hands-on than application than there is theory. So far in Meta, I've trained over 500, well, not over, but 541 people, colleagues with the Energizer, 226 external people, which are often partners that Meta works with. And the Lean Greenbelt, we've so far trained 96 people and 50 Meta staff and 56 internally. And this week, we'll add another 11 to those numbers. And these trainings I do both virtually and face-to-face. much prefer face-to-face. So we are improving, we are getting better. The challenge is it's hard to know, it's hard to know how much, because first people have to have time to attend the class, then people have to make time to improve, then they have to document their improvement, and ideally they would measure before and after this improvement, and then finally they would need to share that with me and with others in their organization. And given the context that we work in, and everyone is struggling just to get their normal day job done, it's often difficult to understand how much, what improvements people are making. But I will take some time now to share these with you to give you a sense of the types of things that we are doing. So here's, and these are improvements that came after people have taken my either Energizer or also the Lean Green Belt training. So, and on the bottom right hand of the screen, you'll see basically the one page, I call it Make It Better template, that talks about what's the problem, what changes were made, what's the impact, and some visual images. So with this first one, the problem was that there were the stock management was done offline. There were no standards. It was not meeting the requirements, especially for tracking medication. And what they ended up doing was creating an online Excel tool. And when we talk about online automation, we often just talk about going to Excel. That did meet all the requirements for stock management and increase the impact. What it allowed us to do was have much greater visibility and easy reporting. And it was something that could apply to all of our country programs. And this was done by someone in the headquarters. The next one is Toyota procurement. Toyota rules in the humanitarian sector. When you want a solid vehicle that keeps going and has minimum need for repair, you buy Toyota. And we were buying our four-wheel drive Toyotas through MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, but it created long delays for us. And someone realized, hey, why don't we Meta create an agreement with Toyota Gibraltar? We can buy them directly and much more quickly get the vehicles when we need them. Another example is visibility items. Visibility items are things like shirts and baseball caps and other things that show, or stickers that show this is Meta who's working or who's giving these things out. And in order to take something out of the stock and a visibility item, we in fact needed two similar forms to be filled in. And the change that was made is, well, they modified the stock request to include the purchase request, and therefore thus making it that one only had to fill in one form. And the impact was that we had fewer documents, fewer signatures, and we're able to get things out of stock, from stock more quickly. And the next one, this is one that I was involved with, is the communication of our ethical commitment. We are adherence to the core humanitarian standard. We've been certified according to the CHS. And one of the things that they require is that we let the people that we're serving, we let them know what are our ethical commitments, what behaviors should they expect from Meta employees. And we weren't doing such a good job of that. What I did was I created a handful of standard posters that one can contextualize with local call-in numbers and for feedback and so forth. And then these things were rolled out and posted in hallways and in areas where we're working. So created a standard template that can be adapted and posting in English and Arabic, and then other they could also translate them into local languages if they wanted to. And so basically we've got much better communication on our ethical commitments. This next one is from DR Congo, and this photo is also from DR Congo, but one of our WASH engineers, Tom, he, before the improvement, it took 2 people 7 days to calculate the project budget for a water sanitation hygiene project. And what he did was then take an Excel template and used some formulas and bills of quantities and existing known costs, and was able to reduce from 7 days to about 7 minutes the time it would take 2 people to create. So you simply had to, for the different types of wash structures, you simply had to indicate by location how much, what the quantity of items were, and then you automatically had a budget. Nairobi, where I am right now, we have a shared service center that services a number of different countries in the area. And this was before COVID. I had given the training, and a year late, my one-day energizer, a year later, I come back and they said, Andrew, sit down because we want to tell you about the things that we've done with the training that you gave us. And so I said, wonderful, I'd love to hear this. And so what they said, we created a process map for procurement through to the payment process, and it significantly reduced conflicts and confusion. We created an SOP for shipping, which significantly reduced our error rate, so there are no more problems with waybills and with shipments. We created a checklist of documents to prepare before cargo arrives at the airport. And what was happening is that something would arrive at the airport, and then they had to spend time collecting all the documents that they needed to bring to the airport to pick up the items. But they said, well, we've created this checklist, now we get the documents ready, and when something arrives, we can pick it up right away. Another example, the service center also is home to some of the staff of the Somalia program. It used to be that the procurement documents, after procurement was completed in Somalia, they would send those documents physically to Nairobi to be reviewed and indicated what needs to be corrected, and then sent back to Somalia, and then corrected and sent again to Nairobi. But because of the improvements that they had made, it only makes one trip from Somalia to Nairobi because the first-time quality is so good. Another example of Somalia, we have a data collection process for Medicare-supported health facilities. It was lengthy, it was manual, it had many errors in it. The team created an online form to collect data, and they trained staff to use that form. This reduced the data collection time from, instead of 20 to 25 days, 2 to 3 days. So huge improvement. It reduced the time that the team was spent on collecting data from almost half of their time, 45% of their time, down to 5% of their time. And it significantly reduced the errors that were involved in this process. At the same time, then it also increased our analytical capabilities because we had easier access to higher quality data that we can look and understand trends and how things are going, what impact we're having. Now, we're already doing this in many countries as well. We have a team in the Middle East, in fact, that's focused on automating and digitalizing our data collection. But this team really stepped out in advance and did something in advance of maybe their time in the queue. So bravo to them for that. Another example of Medar Somalia is, and this comes from Abdunur, who is my innovation champion in Somalia, around Kaizen events. I'll just read it for you. He said, during these events, employees at all levels are encouraged to participate, voice their concerns, and suggest improvements. About daily stand-up meetings, which they began, encourages all team members to share their progress, challenges, and ideas. About process mapping, it engages many employees, allows them to identify bottlenecks and deficiencies. Even lower-level employees who are directly involved in day-to-day operations often have valuable insights into streamlining processes and eliminating waste. And he also wrote about Gemba walks. This practice gives staff the opportunity to voice concerns, share insights, and propose improvements directly with management. It breaks down hierarchical barriers and encourages open communication. And I sent a note back to Abdunur. I said, Abdunur, this sounds like a textbook. Are you actually doing these things, or are you just telling me because this is what the theory says? And he says, Andrew, no, we're actually doing these things. And this is our experience. This is not just the theory. This is our experience of what applying lean continuous improvement is having in Medar Somalia. Another example is in Medar Jordan, which is also one of our highly continuous improving countries. And they created a project to strengthen localization, which means building the capacity of local entities, stakeholders to address crises in their areas. And we're building then the capacity of our local humanitarian actors. But what types of things do we need to do? This will sound very lean to you also. The partnering team created a standard partnership approach, new tools and processes, and standard capacity building materials so that they could have a standard way of doing things rather than trying to do things differently with every different group. So to summarize all these examples, how does lean help? Lean helps, for one, by reducing costs. And if we reduce costs, we're able to help more people. Lean also helps by making us more agile so we can adjust to the many changes that we face and challenges and changes that we face on a daily basis. It also strengthens our project quality so that we can achieve greater impact. It also helps us internally, the people who are doing the work, because it reduces the burden on our staff. So we have greater employee well-being because really folks are often working all out just to get the work done. And lastly, Lean equips and inspires our employees, which really increases engagement, which gives people greater joy in their work. And because we're listening to them, we're hearing what their ideas are, benefiting from their experience simply by giving them the expectation and the capability to improve. And hopefully this has inspired you to want to help. I would strongly encourage any one of you, find and support a nonprofit or NGO that you know, that you're familiar with, find them, offer them your services. I think that's a great way to go. I have, with my friend Sammy Obara at Hansha, we've created something called Lean 360. If you want to do long distance virtual pro bono coaching of people that I train, my Lean Green Belts, we're looking for people to make an initial 3-month commitment, an hour per week, up to an hour a week, to provide coaching for a Lean Green Belt, which will help them accelerate their application, their learning, and their impact. So key takeaways from this presentation: Lean is empowering NGOs to help more people in a better way. Unfortunately, Lean is still in its infancy in the NGO sector, and I completely resonate with what Jim Womack said earlier today about we need to be more vocal and we need to share what Lean is and the impact that Lean is having, and hopefully this is one way we can do that. And also, you can provide help by pro bono coaching. Again, an NGO or nonprofit close to you or through Lean 360, you're welcome to join us in that. So thank you for your time and attention. I'm eager to answer any questions, and you can see my email address there. I'd be delighted to connect with you, whether on LinkedIn or email directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Well, such inspiring work. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. We do have a couple of questions already, and everyone feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible. One comes from Ben. Awesome to see the improvements. What breakthrough opportunities do you see for Lean in NGOs, and what future state do you believe is possible?
Wow. Thanks, Ben. So breakthrough for me would be if our institutional donors saw the benefit of Lean and started to fund it. And we're committing we're giving us the resources because NGOs are stretched for money. And if the donors, 80% of our money comes through institutional donors that are through grants. And if the grant donor is not funding continuous improvement, chances are it'll be very difficult for us to do that. So big breakthrough would be institutional donors are interested in funding it. And then also when senior leaders see the value, then they also will be able to commit some of the limited resources. I am working on a book on this topic, the Lean NGO, to share it with other leaders and with institutional donors. Hopefully next year, something will come out.
Great. Another question from Gwendo is, what are some of the challenges in Lean in NGOs versus the private sector?
Yeah, well, so in the private sector, you always have the measure of cost and profit, and if you're making profit, you're doing better. NGOs, by definition, are not able to make profit. So if we invest $1 million in something and we get $1 million in benefit. Well, in fact, we only get maybe 200,000 of that in benefit, because the rest of it goes to the projects that are funded by grants. And so it's very difficult for us to, and we always have this pressure to reduce overhead, reduce overhead, reduce overhead, because who wants to fund the salaries of MEDER employees in Switzerland, or even the staff in the shared service center? Everyone wants to fund the actual work in the field, helping the people that we're serving. So to spend time and energy on overhead, on things that build the capacity of the organization, is one of the biggest challenges that I see also in NGOs.
Great. One more question. Can you
Sure.
also talk more about buy-in by leadership?
Well, so I've not had problem. Once I'm able to share with someone what process excellence is and what the benefits are, and if they're able to go through my training, most people say, "Wow, this is great. I see the application. I want to do this." In fact, I worked in Nairobi. I think I might have mentioned that, for 3 years while I was working for World Vision. And the reason I came to Nairobi was I had made a visit to the East Africa region, to Tanzania, to Burundi, and Uganda. And I was interviewing people for a handbook that I was helping to write. And while I was in these places, I thought, gosh, here I am, PhD from MIT, with this expertise and experience in process improvement. So I said, I don't want to just take information. I want to give something back. So I offered in each of those 3 countries the people that I was working with to give them a brief energizer training, whether it was half an hour, 2 hours, or half a day. And in each case, they accepted. And in each case, there was an overwhelming response. Andrew, this is amazing. This is wonderful. We need to do more of this. Will you come here and help us out? And I was able to make that work out. And so most people, when they hear it and understand it, they see the benefit. The challenge is to get senior leaders who don't know what it is, who've not heard of lean, or who may think lean is for manufacturing or automobiles or the private sector. They just don't know what it is. So it's very hard to get them committed and engaged to it. They understand we have process problems we need to improve, but they just may not know that this lean thing is worth committing to. And that's the challenge that we face.
It's very interesting. I was, when you were talking, I kept thinking about that saying that we have in the lean world. It's like, if you don't have a crisis, make one. And I mean, it sounds like in your line of work, crises are not in short supply. So I've almost wondered, what is the, not just leadership, but in general, when people understand the impact that your work, I guess is what you were talking about just now, but when people understand the impact of the work and the knowledge that you're sharing with them, the lean knowledge you're sharing with them, it's almost like they really understand the value. And there, I wonder, is that what makes resistance go away? Is that what convinces them to get on board?
That would be the thing. The challenge is, even as you've seen in these stories that I've shared with you today, I don't have much hard data. Things have gotten a lot better. We've reduced defects. We've streamlined these things, but the hard data is very difficult to come by. I didn't take the time to share with you the hard data that I did have when I was in World Vision in East Africa region, where I was completely focused and dedicated on this work. We were able to reduce costs annually by $1.5 million, where we targeted it, we reduced by almost 60% the span time on certain processes. So there is, but it is hard to come by. That's the big challenge.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think what you shared with us demonstrates that the impact of lean goes well beyond individual implementations in organizations and can truly help people in need. And so I thank you. I thank you for sharing your experience with us.
My pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for joining this session. Goodbye, and please enjoy the rest of the event.
Great. Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye. Happy? I think it went well.
Great. Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm
Very
quite
good.
pleased with it.
Yes. Yes, I'm glad. I'm glad. Yes, I think you had about 80 people at peak. So it's
Oh,
pretty
okay. Well,
very good.
awesome.
All right. I'm gonna jump on to my next list of
I'm sure
duties.
you've got other things to do. Yes. No,
Well, it was lovely to meet you, and let's
yeah,
definitely stay in
likewise.
touch.
Okay. Yeah. Look forward to it. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you, Andrew. Have a good evening. Bye.
You too. Goodbye.
Bye.